Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the August State TA Day webinar. Can you confirm that you can see my screen and see Karen, Melissa, and myself? I believe we're the only people on camera. Yep, thank you guys so much. Great. Okay, they can see and hear us. We'll go ahead and get started with our first presenter. We have Melissa from our Clayton team. She'll be giving an update on the Colorado Shines QRIS rating system. Go ahead, Melissa.
Awesome. And am I able to share my screen as well here?
Let's see. Okay, you should get a notification.
Yep.
Great.
Okay, so everyone should be able to see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So just giving you guys some updates on the Colorado Shines rating and where we're at. So I know I've given some presentations already in previous weeks, but here is some information on just why we're considering the virtual rating process. And so, of course, we want to continue to support children and families in accessing quality care. We want to provide a modified rating that's going to meet providers where they're at right now in these times of COVID. And we want to keep quality improvement at the forefront of teaching practices and ensure providers have an option for rating so that needed funding can continue. So here's a little bit just on how we've developed the virtual rating and our process thus far. So we have consulted ERSI, which are the authors of the environment rating scales. We also began doing a little research on what other states were doing. So Karen and I were able to attend several meetings with build leaders across the nation. We consulted our state anchor team, and they've served as an advisement role as we've continued to create the virtual rating process and what it looks like. And then right now, we're still developing procedures. We're actually really close to finalizing all of them as we're getting ready to start our first pilot cohort next week, next week they're starting. So just some overall general information. They're going to have a 2-month rating window. So the initial ERS evidence is due the first 30 days, and the indicator evidence will be due at the end of their 2-month window, which is typically how that's done for the documentation. We have modified the ERS component specifically for Colorado Shines levels 3 through 5. And then we will be looking to randomly select at least one classroom from each age group, and the rating will be valid for 3 years. So I wanted to talk with you a little bit more about some provider supports that we have in the works here. All of these are in the process of being finalized by OEC, but have been drafted and are almost ready to go. So we have a Life of the Virtual Ratings provider resource that's going to come out, and it's just a really nice one-pager that walks providers through step-by-step exactly what they need to do within the rating. We have a virtual rating FAQ. I am excited to announce that that is on Clayton's website, and I will post the link to that in the chat when we're done, so y'all can start accessing that resource. That's going to be a living document, so we will update that from time to time. As we're going through our pilots, we're going to add any common questions that come up as well. So you will see that get updated frequently and have version dates. We have ERS video tips for providers that is really going to give them some tips and tricks for taking a good video. It's primarily focused on cell phones just because we know most folks have a cell phone even if they don't have other technology, but the tips will also work for any other technology that they decide to use to submit their evidence. We have ERS video walkthrough checklists. So this is an easy checklist for providers so they can go through and make sure that the video that they're submitting includes all of the content that we need for ratings. And then we also have an items not observed list. So as I had mentioned before, we have several items that were NA'd. Some of them include supervision and some language components, as well as those health department requirements with sensory play and soft toys. So those items have been NA'd. And when something is NA'd, it doesn't hurt or help the score. It is literally just not considered in scoring. So we have those lists that are going to be coming out. We also have a resource list that's going to give providers a list of where they could seek training and the things that we cannot rate. So for instance, interactions, supervision, health and safety, where can they find training on those things? Because we know that those are still important. We just can't rate them accurately in a virtual landscape. And then we're also going to get ready to launch some information sessions that are coming up here in September. We're going to continue the Q&A sessions that providers get invited to, as well as councils and coaches. And the assessment team is going to be providing check-in emails twice a month, which is a consistent practice. But we're also expecting that we're going to be providing a lot of additional supports to providers, especially around some of these technical pieces. So next steps for us, we're finalizing all of our resources right now. We're piloting with cohort 1, so they are starting next week. Cohort 1 is a pilot of a provider that is engaged in Colorado Shines, but not necessarily waiting on their rating. So we got a volunteer to help us there. And then we're going to pilot with 2 additional cohorts in the following months after that. So in September and October, we'll have more cohorts piloting. Those will be the providers that were waiting on a rating. During this pilot phase, we're seeking volunteers. So if a program is ready and they are in the queue, then they can be part of the pilot. We have already started our outreach to providers to see if they're ready to go and would like to rate virtually. So we're working on that and gathering our list of folks who are interested. And then after the pilot, we're going to make revisions based on the feedback, and we're analyze our data and continuously do that through each pilot. We are trying to get a variety of providers of those that are interested. So we're getting a really good sample in our pilot phase. And then for the providers that do pilot, the rating results will count as their official rating, but they're going to have many supports and opportunities along the way to ensure that they're submitting what they needed. So during the pilot phase, they're going to be working really closely with their assessment associate to ensure that they're submitting exactly what is needed. And we can expect that those supports will continue, as the rating goes on. It'll just be less and less needed as folks get more familiar. And then, as I mentioned, we got those information sessions coming. We are going to hopefully be announcing next week all of the information for the information sessions that are going to continue on for several months after September. So this is our just communication plan and our piloting plan timeline here. So you can see that we got the cohort 2 in September, cohort 3 in October, hopefully to fully launch in November. And then we're going to begin information sessions, TA webinars. I will be attending those and updating information as I have been, and then the Q&A sessions will be utilized as well. So those are the latest updates. We are excited and looking forward to launching our pilots and learning some more information as we go. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. We do have one quick question. It says, can you tell us what programs are going to be in the pilot from our community once it's known?
Yes.
And that's from an early childhood council.
Yes, yeah. So Josh will be communicating that as he typically would with councils, and just let everyone know when they're selected once we have our final list and have confirmed that providers are in fact interested. So absolutely, we'll make sure that gets shared back out with the group.
And can I just add real quick, we had a couple of folks reach out and ask for, some of the supports that are being created. And I just want to reassure everyone, you're going to get those. We want to get through our very first cohort first, because we do believe we'll probably have a few tweaks and things like that. And then once we get some of that feedback and make those tweaks, then we'll definitely get that information out to you very quickly and let you know who those programs are.
There is a comment that says, please post the link you referenced. You're muted.
You're muted.
Yes, I will do that. Sorry. I will do that right now as we're wrapping up here.
Thanks, Melissa. And as always, if you have any questions for Melissa, just go ahead and type them in the question box. And we will send out all the follow-up documentation and the recording tomorrow. Melissa, do you have anything else you're going to touch base on, or is that it for now?
Nope, that was it. And Karen covered the piece we wanted to mention on, as soon as we can get these resources tidied up, we'll get them your way.
We do have one question. It says, will a program get to decline being in the cohort?
Yes, they have the opportunity to decline. That's why I said we're seeking volunteers, because one of our biggest pieces is we want to support our providers where they're at. And if they're just not ready with the chaos that's going on with COVID still, or just not ready in general, we're going to support that. We're going to hold their place in the queue so their rating levels are not going to drop. And we will revisit them at another time, either to see if they're interested again, or they can hold tight until we are out of the pandemic and hopefully back to normal ratings. So we will continue to support programs, and so no one should feel pressured in hopping into a cohort, and that's why we're asking for volunteers.
Yeah, and just to build on that a little bit, we did chat with our leadership team yesterday and confirm that we will be holding ratings harmless, and i.e. not dropping them during this time if they're choosing to wait until we're in a more traditional path, or if they're closed for some reason. But we do really want you guys to help us out for those programs who are planning to go through a rating, even if it's not virtual and they want to hold, to please submit their application, because the data system itself works really well when they do that, and it will hold those ratings constant and we won't miss somebody falling through the cracks. So just again, encourage people to enroll or to apply, and we'll keep them in the queue, and when they're ready, we'll work with them on their timeline.
All right, thank you guys so much. We're going to move right along to our next presenter. We have Renee Alarcon from the PDIS team, PDIS OEC team. She will be providing an update. Renee, do you have slides today?
Hi guys. Yes, let me see
Great.
about this. Hopefully this works. Okay, maybe.
Did you get a notification to share your screen?
Yes, I did. Okay, here, I think I should have a drum roll for everybody.
There we go.
Oh, good, you can see them. Okay, good. All right, guys, happy Friday Eve, everybody. My updates are really quick. So there's just a lot going on with PDIS, so thought I would just give a quick update during today's call. So some of you might have already seen this and are aware of this, but this actually happened a few weeks ago. There have been changes to the course catalog in PDIS. So basically the search function, it's a much more enhanced search. So before that search function, you really had to enter in specific words that were in the title of the course, but now the vendor has improved that. So now your searches should display a lot more options when you're looking for courses. So just wanted to mention that. And then also wanted to just quickly mention, we had a COVID-19 course. It was actually the COVID-19, hang on, sorry guys. Okay, it was the COVID-19 resource. Let me pull up the exact name. Okay, one moment. Yes, so we ended up having to take that course down pretty quickly, and we just wanted to make mention of that to you guys. So if you have any questions about that, please let us know. And then really it's important that you guys are checking the OEC website for the most up-to-date information on that. Yeah, I know we had some folks that were interested in that course, had completed that course, and then since it was taken down so quickly, that's why we wanted to mention it today. And then last but not least, the PDIS dashboard. So there are some changes that are coming to that, and you will actually see those starting Monday. So Monday, August 31st, when you log into PDIS and then you go to the dashboard, it will look different. We're actually getting a demo in a few moments right after this call. I was hoping to see it sooner, but the changes are I think just to make the user experience more intuitive on that page. And then there is going to be, if you go to it actually right now, there is just a message that pops up, and you can click the link in the message, and it takes you just to kind of an overview of what those changes will look like. So please reach out if you guys have any questions, and just wanted to make you all aware of that. So I think that's all that I had, Monica.
Thanks so much, Renee. We will move right along. Next, we have Erin Muweni. She will be presenting on the Child Care Sustainability Grant. And thank you so much, Erin, for agreeing to be here. We've had several questions.
Oh, that's good. I don't know what questions have been posed, so I'll keep the overview brief so I can take some time to answer specific questions. So the sustainability grants are formula-based, meaning that you are automatically eligible as long as you update your status in our system to be open and operating by October. You have to be open and operating by October 1st, but you have to update your status by August 30th. That's so that we can actually process the payments and get the money out the door. Last I checked, we had just over 1,300 providers respond to the portal. And Monica, I don't want to be on the big screen. Anyway.
I don't know how to change that, sorry.
I don't know. Essentially, we're hoping to get a slightly better response than that, and trying to figure out what's going on there. But the grants range from $1,000, which is basically for our licensed childcare homes, based on capacity levels, all the way to $3,000 for our largest centers. The only providers that are not eligible are first our residential camps, so our summer camps, overnight camps are not eligible, and then any provider that has been 100% supported through other public funding. So your Head Start sites, for instance, if they're 100% Head Start, or maybe a CPP site that only offers the 2.5-hour CPP preschool time and does not have any wraparound childcare. So those are the only types of providers that would not be eligible. And again, we wanted to make it very simple, very straightforward. Basically, what they have to do is update their status in our portal, give us a little bit of additional information. The portal also collects other needs. As you all know, we've talked about the portal in the past. So they can indicate whether they're interested in more technical assistance, or if they're interested in improving their quality, or they need early childhood mental health resources. So as soon as we start to get a better response rate, we'll be able to get that information out to councils based on geographic location, so that you all have a list of providers who would like some outreach. After the 30th, the providers who have indicated that they're open and operating will receive an email from our grant administrator. The vendor is Metrics IQ. Metrics will send a certification essentially to the providers so that they can certify they understand what these dollars must be used for and what these dollars cannot be used for. So it's the same requirements we have for federal funding. So they can't use it, for instance, to build a building. So no capital improvements, for instance. And after they sign that certification that they understand the allowable uses, and they send in their payment information, so their not a W-9, I don't even think we need the W-9, just the ACH form, then Metrics will release the grant payment. After we do the initial grant distribution, whatever money is left over from what has been designated for sustainability grants, we will do a bonus grant, essentially a second round of grants based on prioritized populations. But we don't know how much money that's going to be until we give out the first round of base grants based on that formula. And again, based on licensed capacity, not enrollment. So I will stop there and see if there are questions. I can't see a chat, Stacy. So if they're using the chat, it's not coming up on mine. Maybe it's the question box I need to look at. Hold on.
I can read them for you, Erin, if you'd like. Yeah, and they are in the question box. First is more of a comment. It says, the table that's going around says that only providers offering care of 15 plus are eligible, which makes it very confusing for family child care homes and seems as though they're not eligible.
Yeah, that's a typo. So we'll be fixing that typo. I'm sorry about that. So all providers, including homes, are eligible.
And then is there a field in Salesforce that tells us if the providers have completed the provider status update?
I don't know that. I can find out if it's, I don't know if it's talking to that. It is part of the Salesforce system, but I don't know if they're talking to each other. So let me see if there is, and if there isn't, I'm happy to send a report. The report may be based on who has responded to the portal as opposed to who hasn't, but I can certainly talk to Dorothy about that.
Great, thank you. And those are the questions we've been getting on the help desk, is just providers that think they've completed it but want to, make sure that they have in fact.
Okay.
And then our next question is, how many programs do we estimate would be eligible? 1,300 seems like a very small number.
Yeah, 1,300 is a small number. I think we estimated around 4,000 programs would likely be eligible. It could be even a little bit higher than that. It just depends on their funding source. We have about 4,500 providers in the state, but there is a proportion of those that are, about 200 of them are residential camps. And then we figured we probably have a couple hundred that are Head Start or a preschool program only.
And next is a data request. It says, can ECCs get access to the open closed data from that portal?
I think eventually we'll be able to run those reports for councils. I was just hoping we were going to have a better number of responses. So one thing I've asked our data team to do is to start cross-referencing those that have responded through the portal, those who we know must be operating because they're getting CCAP payments for actual attendance, and then those who happen to be in the queue for a Colorado Shines rating and have confirmed that they're on the schedule. So I'm hoping to get a better sense of who's actually out there and who and just hasn't updated their status versus those that may literally not be operating and they're not checking their emails and they're not closing their licenses with us, because we're not seeing very many closures, official closures of the license. So I don't know if that just means they're still in a wait and see mode or what, but we are hoping to try to get that.
Our next question is, can we send a targeted email to family childcare homes with that revision so that they know to update their status? They need that money desperately.
Yes. Ironically, I was thinking, oh, no one will argue that it's a typo because it looks like you're either getting 1,000 or more than 1,000, but I now understand where that would be confusing for homes. So I will, we can definitely do that. I might even be able to target that to homes. I'll see if there's a way for us to do a targeted communication. Oh, Karen says we have 1,700. All right, well, that's improvement.
And just a comment, it says if you could send us a report, we can reach out to them at a local level and remind them. Thank you.
That would be great. And honestly, if you want to send, I don't know if you all have email lists for all of the providers in your catchment areas, but you know, because it's not a huge percentage of providers that we've heard from so far, I think even an email blast to all your providers couldn't hurt. We do want them to continue to update that status in the portal, especially if their needs change. So it's not something that should be stagnant or a one-time thing. It was built so that we weren't doing these surveys all the time. It was built so that a provider could go in anytime and update what they needed. So if you'd like, I can, okay, that's good to know, Jennifer, that they're not getting like a confirmation email or something. Let me talk to our developers about that as an enhancement. In the meantime, because that's a good point, they should be able to go in and at least see, I think, what their status is. There's some of the detail that gets lost every time they go in there. It's kind of a bummer. But we do plan to continue to update and enhance this portal because we think it's a good tool. And it would be nice for you all because you could essentially have reports run for you, or we would be able to have these reports run by, there may be a way for you to run them yourself eventually, so that you have that kind of up-to-date information. So I'm hoping it'll become a really cool tool for us. It's just going to take us a little time to refine it and refine the technology. But I'm going to put that on my wish list, that we need a confirmation email, or eventually my hope is that they go in and they actually see what their profile says. And so it's just kind of like, oh, I'm just updating this portion of my profile. Any other questions?
If there are other questions after this, do we just send them to their licensing specialist?
Yeah, so we didn't want to inundate the councils with those like technical questions. Plus, honestly, we really do need to know their operational status for the licensing side of things, because you know, they're the ones who are supposed to be scheduling the supervisory visits, etc. So we are pointing providers to their licensing specialists, so that if they're having any technical difficulties or they don't understand what to put when it comes to their operational status, then the specialist would be A, aware that they are still around, and B, can kind of walk them through those technical challenges. The specialists also, and they're not very happy with me about this, they're also going to help them with some of the challenges we've seen in the past with DocuSign and those kinds of things that have to do with the attestation for the grant itself. So we just thought we'd just make licensing a one-stop shop for this particular exercise.
Thanks so much, Erin. Those are all the questions we have for now.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks for having me, you guys.
Of course. All right, next we have Stacy Kennedy with Office of Early Childhood Updates. And Stacy, you are muted.
Thank you. I'm not at my normal house, so I'm having to work a couple different things with the phone and computer, so a little challenging here. The update is a relatively quick one, but one that I think is important for you all to know. As many of you know, we posted a solicitation to rebuild the registry in LMS for Colorado, with the idea that the rebuild would really capture all of the early childhood education roles that are called out in licensing, and even expand to some consultative roles. The solicitation was awarded to Deloitte, and we are experiencing a little bit of a delayed or an extended negotiation for that contract, just to ensure that some of the OIT provisions and those kinds of things are in place prior to executing the contract itself. The original timeline was for us to begin the rebuild in July, and here we are, end of August. As a result, we are going to work with the current vendor to secure an additional 6 months, so January through June of 2021, with the current PDIS in order to allow for sufficient time for the rebuild, since we're kind of in a cramped timeline at this point in the year. I will continue to provide updates around the transition and then provide some clarification around the phases for you all, so you can kind of track the progress and work with us to support some change management locally with providers. But I didn't want to, I felt it was important to provide that update, knowing that many of you are expecting the rebuild to happen within this calendar year. So more to come for sure, but we'll likely have this as a standing kind of update as we move forward. I don't know if there's any questions. If you do have questions about this, or you think of them after this TA call, do reach out directly to me, and I'll be happy to kind of provide any clarification that would be helpful. So thanks, and I hope you all are well.
Thanks, Stacy. Next presentation is also Stacy will be joining us, and Whitney LeBluff from the Colorado Evaluation and Action Lab about the Early Childhood Educator Dashboard. And we do have Phil Perrin, everyone knows from back in the day. Phil, I don't have you on the agenda, but you will be sharing your screen as part of my understanding. So I will give you access to that.
All right, can you all hear me? This is Whitney from the Colorado Evaluation and Action Lab.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. All right, so I am pretty sure that you are not going to be able to see my screen, so I might just wing it for my piece. And then Phil will share with you the fun stuff anyways. I'm also having trouble with my camera, so this is just a wonderful tech day. I even put my face on today and you guys don't get to see it. So anyway, so it's nice to meet all of you. I don't think I've met many of you. I work with the Colorado Evaluation and Action Lab. We're a partnership with the governor's office and his state agency leadership team. to support around where the state has sort of pain points and challenges that could benefit from data capacity building and research and evaluation. And then we either provide that support from our internal team if we have the expertise, or we lend some of the expertise among our sort of community researchers across universities and research organizations in the community. And so what I wanted to share with you all today is the result of a very fun and productive and substantial partnership that we had with the Office of Early Childhood. Stacy and Aaron and Karen Rosa have been wonderful colleagues, and Renee, to really work on disciplining the early care and education workforce data in OEC's house. There's a few data systems over there that really collect a lot of really important information. As you all are familiar, PDIS is one of them, but there are a few others that when pulled together, we can really talk a lot more sort of confidently about the early care and education workforce in Colorado. And so we approached this work with support from Piton and Buell Foundations, you know, not in a sort of typical research way, which would be, let's pull all these data together and run some analyses and answer some interesting questions once, and then we'll share a report with you guys, and that'll be that. We did do that, but that was really a small portion of the value of the work. The bigger value was, you know, how can we pull these data together, not once, but create a way for that to happen routinely, so that you can see this information in an ongoing way, not just once, and then do it in a way that's interactive for stakeholders in the community, like the early childhood councils and providers and programs and other stakeholders. And so that was really the purpose of the work. So I don't know if you all remember, it was a while back, but I know we had sent out a survey posing some of the common questions we had heard people asking about the workforce, to hear what people felt were the highest priority questions and how often those questions need to be answered for stakeholders. So we used that to help guide what landed in the dashboard. And so the dashboard has recently launched, and we thought it might be most useful for everybody on the call today to see a demo of that dashboard if Phil is able to share his screen. Oh, I think he has. And so we'll sort of walk you through this. And then I sort of had some questions for you that I would just wanted to pose. So really, you know, what on there seems to be triggering really useful information for you, and how might you be using it or anticipate using it? That would be very helpful to know. And then conversely, what isn't on this dashboard that if you had that information, or the programs or workforce members in your community had that information, you would really find some actionable information out of it. So just kind of keep that in mind as we step you through this. So this is the landing page for the dashboard. We put some key indicators up there right up front that you can click on and get to the relevant tab from. But we found across the data systems in OEC that we pulled together that there were roughly 23,700 working ECE professionals in 2019. And that just under half of those had indicated they'd earned at least an associate's degree, BA, or advanced degree of some kind. About 1 in 5, or 21%, were brand new to the field in 2019. So they had never worked in a licensed provider prior to 2019. And then 28% had made some kind of job change across organizations, licensed organizations, at some point in 2019. So that's not including those new individuals. That's among those who had been working the previous year. How many moved in 2019? So that's just front-loaded information on the dashboard. You can see there's a place for you to click on and see that snapshot report where we sort of surface the most helpful, what we felt helpful highlights about this information. And then the second tab we have on here, that if you're a huge data geek, you're welcome to explore, but this gives you sort of the path, the flow of how we went from the data sources that contributed. So starting with PDIS, you know, here's the full list of users, and then we filter down across this flow chart matching to background checks to know who was actually actively working in a licensed facility. And then we filter that down to both family providers and those working in center-based programs. And then we did further filtering, as you can see, until we get to the final buckets at the end. And this is how we this helps you to understand how we categorize and who we could kind of pull out as specific professional roles. So you can see we have information on family providers, directors of center-based licensed providers, teachers serving 3 to 5 year olds, both lead and assistant, and then we have lead and assistant teachers for those serving 0 to 2. And then lastly, support roles, which we defined as those who have some kind of direct interaction with children, special educators, paraprofessionals, substitutes, and assistant directors. And that's how we got to our 23,700. And then those are the
Whitney,
data.
quick
Yeah.
question. Where can this be found?
Oh, good question. So it is on the OEC's Data and Resources webpage. And when you click on there, you'll see a link to data, and then the dashboard image is there, and you can click right on the dashboard. Phil, just so you know right now. Say that again?
Whitney, I'll add a link to the chat for
Great.
folks, and then we'll include it in the follow-up information.
Thank you, Stacy. Yeah, and I'm not looking at the question, so just jump in. I couldn't figure out how to navigate these. So if you guys have questions, if Monica or someone wants to jump in and just shout them at me, please do. So then we added the first tab really is looking at the full range of ECE professionals across the state. So if we click on that, so we tried to present this in a couple ways. On the left, you see there's a map which has the 23,700 individuals across the entire state. And you can look at this as Phil's showing by county, by your council region, by the state regions. And then the way we tried to display this was in a sort of meaningful way that people think about child to teacher ratios. And so we took all ECE professionals in the state and divided that by, or excuse me, all children 0 to 5 in the state, divided that by the number of ECE professionals, and you get a statewide average of 17 children 0 to 5 in the state per ECE professional. And then you see for every region, we color coded those so that blue is actually better. So they have fewer children per ECE professional in those blue areas. And as you progress into the deeper green areas, those are areas that are doing a bit worse than the statewide average of children per ECE professional. And then if you look on the right side where the bar graph is, that breaks down for the state what professional roles people were in within that 23,700 individuals. So you can see the majority, about half, were in 3 to 5 year old serving teacher roles, and about 25% or so were in 0 to 2 serving roles. Which ended up becoming something that I think anecdotally everyone probably on this call knows, but was really helpful to highlight in the report. And the governor's team has actually used that to change how they're setting goals around increasing teachers in the state. They're going to include it for all teachers serving 0 to 5, not just pre-K teachers. So if you click on one of those counties, I think this is counties, yeah. So if you click on a county, those bars will shift. And so now the bars represent that distribution across roles for that county, and those blue lines across the bars keep the statewide average. So you can see where a particular county, or if you're looking at a council region, how they're distributing across these professional roles relative to the state. And then you can also click on one of these bars and it'll show you change the map to show you the distribution of that professional role across the state. So now it's showing you for all those serving 0 to 2 or family home providers, how that's distributing across the state. So then if we click on the demographics, and by the way, Phil, you're an awesome navigator as I'm speaking. We should do this more frequently. So we were able to look at race, ethnicity, and age for the dashboard. And these data were pulled from self-report from the PDIS system. So the top bar graphs show you race and age overall for ECE professionals in the blue bars. And then those gray bars tell you for all of Colorado what the race and age distributions are. So you can kind of see what do ECE professionals look like relative to Colorado as a whole. And then the bottom stacked bar charts take those demographics and segment them by the professional roles within the ECE profession. So you can see, for example, among Black ECE professionals, what percentage were working in a director role versus a 3 to 5 assistant teacher, for example. And we won't take you through the detail of this, but again, you can break that down on the left by geography of interest. So you can click on one of those, and these bar charts will all switch to show you the unique information for that particular region of interest. And then we have similar setup for qualifications. So again, this was self-reported information in the PDIS system of highest educational attainment, and then the EC 2.0 credential levels. And it's set up in a very similar way. Top bars are overall, and then the bottom bars break down those qualifications by professional role. Just something to note as you're exploring this, the ECE credential, only about 36% of professionals in PDIS had achieved a valid credential. And so this represents the distribution among that 36% with a valid EC 2.0 credential. And then the new to field tab, this is really our way of getting at sort of a proxy for recruitment, if you will. So this is that 21% that I showed you on the first page who were new to the field in 2019. So set up very similarly to that EC professionals tab. You have the map showing the sort of concentration of new professionals across the state, and the deeper, darker areas are showing where more than 50% of ECE professionals in that area were new in 2019. And then again, it breaks it down on the right by professional roles of interest. So those are the new to field percentages by professional role. Probably not surprising that the highest percentage is among sort of an entry position of assistant 0 to 2 infant toddler teachers. And then something that Phil nicely added on the bottom is the average length of time in the field by those professional roles. So that's the number of years on average. 2.7, for example, a director has been in the field in Colorado. And then if you click on a particular region, just pick somewhere, Douglas, and it'll do the same thing you saw on the other one, where it'll show Douglas's distribution relative to the state. And then it'll also show you at the bottom how the length of time in the field differs for Douglas versus Colorado. And then somewhat on the flip side, we have job turnover. And so this tells us it's important to note a couple things. Job turnover includes those who left the field. And in the report, we do a little more nuancing and breaking down the actual number who leave the field. It is about 10 or 11% in 2019 left the field. It also doesn't do any kind of nuancing, because based on the data systems, we don't have information at present on, is this a job promotion turnover? So sometimes it's a good thing. Is this a lateral move? Is, you know, and again, is this leaving the field? So it includes all of those. So I think when we're looking at the dashboard, it's probably helpful to think about it less in terms of what does this mean for an individual, and more about what does this mean for the families they serve, the providers that are hiring these folks, sort of the turnover from that perspective. So overall, I mentioned we had about 28% statewide who turned over in 1 year, and that's what the map is presently showing you. And again, the darker areas have higher turnover. And then Phil was just going to show you, you can flip it to show the 3-year turnover rate. So this is among those individuals who were actively working in Colorado for the previous 3 years, how many of them had made at least one turnover, one job change across organizations. And it was about 50%. For the state as a whole. And then the bar charts, again, break it down by role. And then you could see a separate bar for 1-year turnover and 3-year turnover. And those bars will shift if you pick a selected particular geographic region. And then something Phil just recently added that's, I think, super cool, particularly for this group, is downloading of reports. So you can, right from here, you get a map. The dark areas are places where there's just not enough information, too small of a population to be able to produce a report. But for the rest of the state, and you can again flip this to the council region if you'd like. So you can go to your council region and then click on your council of interest, and then you can click to download the report. I'm not sure if it's going to make you flip to a new screen, but oh, there we go. So it'll produce this report for you. So it'll show you all those kind of bar charts that we demonstrated in sort of a paper snapshot form relative to those state numbers. So that is at present what you can find on the link that's going to be provided. And something we've gotten a lot of traction with this. The governor's office has been using it, like I said, to sort of help inform some of the goals that they're setting around increasing and improving the workforce. And so the OEC team has generously included some updates to this in the PDG award. So we're working right now to pull together the updated information for 2020, which we're exploring how we can sort of show changes in the workforce post-pandemic hitting, and also adding some additional information from partners in the state, like higher education, to get more detailed knowledge on where folks have earned a post-secondary award. Is it in an early childhood field? Also from labor and employment, they would be contributing wages, so information on how much individuals are earning in various positions. So we're really looking forward to keeping you all updated, but would love to answer any questions or certainly hear how you guys might find this to be useful or what's missing from it.
So far, just a bunch of positive feedback, and someone says they see the reports and data, but there's no link to open it in the dashboard. Oh, thank you, Phil.
Yep.
And we're working on a little bit of a bug fix. So a few of the tabs are right now not connecting appropriately to the data that supports them. So Phil and I are working through that bug. So I would give us through just the end of the week to be able, if you're not seeing some of those tabs working properly, don't worry,
Yeah,
we're working on them.
Found the issue. It was on any of those pages with a map on it, and I figured out the solution. So should be by the end of the day.
He's my wizard, so. All right, well, you guys, if you want to reach out to me, why don't I just throw my email in here? It's also on the dashboard information, but feel free to reach out if you have any follow-up questions or thoughts.
They do have one question. It says, so all the information is pulled from PDIS?
No, so thank you for asking that. So it's all from OEC's systems. But it is a combination of PDIS users connected to the background checks that occur for individuals working in licensed care facilities. So by connecting those, we were able to determine who was working when in what provider, and then to be able to get the provider information and where people were located, we were able to use the Colorado Shines QRAS data to add in some of that additional information. This all took place within the state, so we leveraged the expertise of another group that we've been facilitating the launch of, which is the Linked Information Network of Colorado. It's situated in the Office of Information Technology in the state, and they have a data scientist who has a very secure and encrypted computing space. He's been background checked and polygraphed to be able to work with criminal justice data. And we've gone through all that to build a capacity that can link and anonymize data for purposes like this. And so we leveraged his expertise with the approval of OEC to connect all the data. And then everything you see on the dashboard is entirely de-identified. So nobody's information can be seen. Personal identifiers aren't on there.
And Sherry, I see your question there was the data from early milestones, data on workforce. So what was interesting about their work was that it was all survey data, whereas what we were using was administrative data. So unfortunately, we can't really combine those two because of the identifiers, but the hope was that together the early milestones work and this would paint a really comprehensive picture, you know, and also reduce the need for surveying as thoroughly if we can gain some insights from the administrative data.
Thanks, Phil. We do have one comment. It says, would love to find a way to include how much providers are paid, but my guess that would only come through surveys.
So just to make sure I'm understanding the language, so providers meaning like the funding source for a provider that then pays the employee, is that the idea? Or how much the individual EC professional is paid?
Employee wages.
Employee wages, great. I'm glad you're interested because that is in our next funded piece of work. So when we connect the labor and employment data, it's through that link that I was talking about, using the capacity of link, we'll be able to connect individual level wages to the individuals from these data and can then explore average wages per year, per quarter.
Great. That's all the questions we have for now. I'll be sending out follow-up documents with Whitney's information if you guys have any follow-up questions.
Thank you again, everybody, for your time.
Thank you. So we will move along to the preschool development grant update. And we have Kristen, oh, there she is, and Angela. Did you want to be the presenter, or you guys have?
Yes, if you can make me the presenter, Monica.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
All right, we can see your screen.
Thank you very much.
So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks again for having us. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Perfect. I'm using my phone today as well. I don't know, my computer audio wasn't working, so I just want to make sure we're all set. We're excited to share some additional updates. I know we've been kind of sharing little bits and pieces along the way on our PDG strategies, but we have some exciting announcements to come. So I'll just have Kristen go through the next 2 slides quickly. Awesome. So as many of you have probably already seen this week, the Child Development Associate Scholarship application was launched on Monday. And if you hadn't seen it yet, I'm actually sending the link to the application in the chat right now. We have announced that we're partnering with 2 groups to administer the scholarship. So Red Rocks Community College and Mesa County Public Health will be administering the funding for the scholarship. And they're also going to be doing some advising associated with it. So they're going to help any candidates that are granted a scholarship to help them find a training program, get registered. They're going to provide some kind of case management throughout that training process to make sure there aren't any barriers to their completion. And then they're going to provide some assistance as they're going through that portfolio and assessment process to finalize the CDA credential. And then, Kristen, we can go to the next slide. So just as a reminder, what is going to be paid for with the scholarship? So for new candidates, we actually can pay for up to $600 for qualified CDA training. Candidates will be able to choose whichever training program that makes sense for them. So we know that there are some in Spanish, some in other languages through the PASO program at the Colorado Statewide Parent Coalition. We know there are virtual, most trainings are virtual at the moment, so that won't be a barrier. It doesn't have to be in person or anything like that. And then we'll pay for the $425 assessment fee for new candidates. And then we had added in some funding for renewal candidates as well. We know throughout the pandemic that families might have limited resources right now, and that $125 fee to renew their CDA might be a bit of a barrier. So we were able to add in funding for 70 renewal candidates. And that's just going to be for the assessment fee, unfortunately not for the training associated with anything for the renewal cost. We will be paying for the center-based CDA certifications as well as the family child care home one, but more of an emphasis on the center-based care because we want to make sure that there are a lot of new licensed child care slots supported by the CDA scholarship. We're really excited about this opportunity getting out there. I know we have already over 100 candidates so far that have applied in just 4 days since it's been open. So we know the demand is there and that folks are excited about this opportunity. So if you know that there are programs in your community that could benefit from this and want to help with recruitment, please do get the word out about this, especially with an emphasis on level 3 and above centers who would qualify for that provisional ECT waiver for anyone that's pursuing their CDA. That's a really excellent way for them to get folks into the classroom quickly once they finish their background check and those pre-service trainings and get registered for a CDA training. They don't have to have it completed to get that waiver and to get someone into the classroom quickly. So we can send some updated information on that if folks are interested. And I think our 2 partners are actually on the phone. Julia and representative from Mesa County is Stephanie Bivens. So if you have any questions, they're going to be your direct contacts at our partners, but you can always send questions to me and I can forward to them as well if you're concerned about any of that communication. So I'll pause here and see if there's any questions in the chat box. I didn't see any so far. Oh, there's one. Let's see. And Monica, if you've got these pulled up quicker.
Sure. Just a comment, it says the book for the CDA will also be provided. And then
yes,
when will, oh, go ahead.
Yes, the books for the CDA will be provided through the scholarship program, and that's outside of that $600 trading cost limit.
And is the application the same for the renewal versus general CDA?
Yes, so we did one application. We didn't want folks to have to search around for different links or things of that nature. So it's the same application for both new and renewal candidates. I think we tested it and it takes around less than 10 minutes to complete. So it's a very simple application and it's available in English, Spanish, and Arabic. I did skip over that earlier. So I just want to make sure that folks know it is available in a couple of languages.
And when will the individuals know after they apply, when will they know if they're accepted?
So they are going to be doing fairly frequent reviews of it. And I don't know if we're able to unmute Julia. I don't want to speak out of turn on how frequently they are going to be doing it. The goal is to notify people within 14 days of the application date. But if we are able to unmute Julia, I want to make sure she can speak to that if it's possible.
Sure, Julia, you are unmuted.
Great, thanks, Angela. Right now, we have already processed 64 applications, and those folks should receive their notification by Monday, hopefully, is the plan. The letters are all approved and ready to go out. We have a follow-up link that they will have to complete that kind of gives the staff that will be working with each individual just some additional information and support. So we should hopefully know those first 64 should have their responses, like I said, by the beginning of next week. And then I'm working as quickly as I can to process through. The applications are coming through really fast. So we're trying to get at least one set of 30 done every day or every other day. So yeah, so we're trying to, but we did tell people within 14 days.
Yeah, and I'll note, and Julia, you can add to this if there's anything more beyond this, but if folks are applying and their training is starting soon and they want to get registered, there is going to be the ability to do some reimbursements for folks. Obviously, the goal is to pay the training program directly so that the candidates don't have to worry about that. But if they have started a training between August 4th and any time in the future, and they get that scholarship acceptance after the fact that they've already registered, there's still a possibility for that reimbursement.
Yes, that is true. And we have learned that there are some agencies that that only will be able to reimburse participants if they use those agencies, just because of how their registration process is. And so we will work on that on a case-by-case basis. But like Angela said, we really want to be able to pay the vendor directly.
And then I see a question here on the inbox. Is there a percentage of scholarships that are earmarked for rural communities? Yes, there is going to be an emphasis on rural communities and childcare deserts. So we've worked on some scoring criteria to make sure that we do focus on that. And then there's some extra points around diversity. So there's questions on the application around languages spoken and race and ethnicity as well. And those all have additional points on that scoring criteria. There's also a question that says that how many people from one program can receive the scholarship funding? We don't have any limitations on, how many teachers from a specific childcare program could get the scholarship. So assuming they're eligible, there's funding available, and they meet kind of the scoring criteria to get funding, they should be able to receive a scholarship with no limitations there. And then, do individuals need to be documented to be eligible? And I think, Julia, we went through and said that that was not a barrier, correct?
Yeah, I think we're good as long as they are able to complete the application. That's the data that we require. So, yeah.
And then last but not least, how many will this allow to get the CDA? Great question. Sorry, I blew through that on this one. There's 220 scholarships available for new candidates and 70 scholarships available for renewal candidates. And then we are anticipating having funding for 2021 as well, but have not announced what the numbers will be for that. And then if there are any other questions around the CDA scholarship, my email will be at the end, or I can also drop Julia's email in the chat in a few minutes. But I do want to get on to the next strategy just so we have enough time on the agenda for everybody else as well. I saw a question earlier in the chat box around the startup and expansion micro grants that Marianne was talking about on today's ECLC call. We're really excited about launching this project as it is associated with assisting programs that are starting up a new childcare home or new center, or expanding existing licensed childcare programs. We have a small set of funds for this program, so we're anticipating somewhere between 20 and 40 awards. So this is a different pool of funds than the CARES Act sustainability grants that Erin talked about earlier. And we have $3,000 set aside, or up to $3,000 set aside for family child care home applicants, and up to $6,000 for child care centers. So again, these are different numbers than those sustainability grants. And these are just a couple of examples of what a project would need to be for that. So again, new homes or centers. And then for existing licensed programs, it might be changing license type for a family child care home, or in terms of a child care center, perhaps it's opening a previously closed classroom, or if you had a multi-purpose room that you were transitioning into a classroom space, these would be eligible projects. Or changing the age served in a classroom. So if you have a preschool classroom that you were intending to change into an infant toddler room, perhaps, or something along those lines, those would be eligible projects. With an emphasis on increasing infant and toddler slots. As many of you know from our needs assessment process last year, we know that infant and toddler care is one of the highest needs across the state. And then again, that child care desert and rural county emphasis, because those are places that are in need of more licensed childcare. So those will be part of that scoring criteria. Similar process to the CDA scholarships. We've put together kind of a grid to rank these projects in terms of that needs assessment scoring. We can go on to the next slide. So allowable costs for these grants are going to be really focused on procedures that will help programs get licensed or expand their programs, as I mentioned earlier. So that includes licensing fees, background check costs, any training or professional development associated with it. So that's pre-licensing, anything that's not already available for free on PBIS, CPR, first aid, things of that nature. Limited early learning materials. So we know that there are a high need for a lot of different learning materials. Unfortunately, we cannot pay for a full classroom set of furniture and things of that nature, but there are going to be allowable costs in that early learning material space. Technology investment, especially now with the pandemic, that there are a lot of needs for video conferencing. So if a program needs to invest in software or hardware associated with accessing that training opportunities, or perhaps it's business related, that you want to invest in some attendance software or automated business tracking for a program, those would be allowable costs. The costs associated with childcare health consultation. So if there's medication designations that a program needs to set up, or it's those initial licensing requirements, the hours associated with meeting with your childcare health consultant would be covered. If there are coaching hours required with planning for a program expansion, we can support that. We know handbooks, marketing materials, and record keeping are going to be necessary to launch a new program or to let people know that there are new licensed childcare slots in a program. And then PPE for things associated with the program or with the project. So for a new program, if they need PPE and sanitizing materials to get started, we know that that's going to be a fairly significant cost. You can apply for that. For existing licensed programs, if you need anything associated with that new classroom, so it's just going to be project specific, not for your whole program, but for opening that new classroom, if there's additional PPE needed or sanitizing products, you can apply for that as well. Unfortunately, there isn't going to be funding available for capital projects. So we did try to do some advocating for maybe fencing and some other allowable things, but that will not be the case with our PDG federal funding. So just wanted to call that out as an exclusion. And then I'm going to have you go to the next slide, Kristen. And then in terms of workflow, so this is where the councils come in. So we are going to be structuring this similar to the Colorado Shines Brighter Quality Improvement Grant, or excuse me, the Colorado Shines Quality Improvement Grant, and that we will be launching the application in the near future. OEC will make the approval process happen, and then we'll notify the program and the council when it's available. And then councils will be there to actually administer the funding. So we have 10% indirect rate set aside for councils to facilitate the grant and administer that funding to the programs that are going through this process. So we're looking to partner with councils to make sure that the programs are well positioned to execute their projects. So I'm hoping to get you the criteria early next week, actually, to give you a few days for review and questions. And then we're hoping to launch the application soon after, but did want to give you a chance to review everything and get comfortable with the criteria for the next steps, since we're going to be working with you to administer the actual funding. And then I'll have you just go to the next slide for questions. And it looks like there are a couple coming through the chat box. Let's see here. So if a program is expanding slots from 14 to 15 and adding an infant toddler program after a new build, would they be eligible? So yes, it sounds like that would be meeting the eligibility criteria. We would obviously have to see the proposal in and of itself and what they would like to see covered through the grant funding. So we'll just have to make sure when you submit those applications that they're explaining what the changes to their programs will be, and then what costs they would like to apply for within those allowable cost categories. Let's see, when is the funding rolling out? So we're hoping to roll this out in the next 2 weeks. As I mentioned just a minute ago, I'd like to give the council a couple of days with the criteria to understand it and make sure that they're comfortable with it. And if they have any questions, that we can facilitate that discussion, and then we can launch it and have programs start applying soon after. Let's see. So how will the programs use startup and expansion funds to cover the cost of coaching? My hope is that programs will already know about, councils will already know about programs that are interested in expanding their program, or programs that are getting ready to apply for a license, and that you can talk to them about how many coaching hours they might need, and include that in the initial proposal. What I also will intend to do is reach out to the council when I have received an application and let them know that I've received one, and we can talk about it if there is a need for some coaching hours that maybe wasn't included in the proposal. we can make sure that that budget is fixed for the project. Let's see. Is the coaching being done by the extra coaches under PDG, or are council coaches involved in the coaching at all? I would like to see this happen within the existing council coaching. And since you have coaches that are pretty familiar with programs and the need in your community, if there's a need for the regional coaches to assist at some point, that we can handle in the future. We're just working on getting the first iteration out at this point in time. Can we go back one slide, Kristen? It looks like someone would like to look at the workflow, I'm assuming. And then if that's not the right slide, let me know. We can move back one more. Let's see. So the GAE dollars will work similar to our current GAE. That's correct. So this is going to be administered through the GAE. You'll go through your existing invoicing process with OEC, and we'll make sure you have the designated line through the GAE that you'll be billing all these costs to. So can we draw down coaching hours from that amount as well? Yes. So we're hoping that the programs do put coaching hours into their proposal. That's the only way that we can have them draw down. It'll be a little bit different than the normal coaching drawdown process, because these will have to be attached to a proposal at the beginning. And then I think that's everything. So again, once we get this criteria out to councils next week, hopefully you'll have a couple of days to take a look at the criteria and get any questions back to us. And if there's anything that we need to work through or add additional guidance to, we will do that. And I do want to point out that we did create a technical assistance document on all of the funding opportunities that are kind of floating around right now. We know that it can be kind of confusing with sustainability grants. There's the Governor's Fund, COVID Fund, there's the Energize Gap Fund that just came out, Keep the Lights On, there's funding through ECLA for family childcare homes. So we tried to note that there are a lot of projects and capital funding opportunities out there that are similar, and tried to point out some of the differences and how they can access any of these funding opportunities if they are an eligible program. So we will send out these documents early next week. We've just got some final finance queues to go through, and I will get this to you as soon as possible.
Thank you guys so much. We will move right along. Oh, I'm sorry,
Monica, we just had one more that if it's okay, if we have some time just to cover this last one.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. And just so I know, how much time will I have to cover this? I want to make sure I leave time for Karen's presentation.
Yeah,
We do have two more presentations.
Oh, okay. So I'll be real quick.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Monica. So just as a reminder, and we spent a great deal of time, I know, talking about the business training and consultation work with the small business development centers that when we came and spoke in July, anticipated would be happening like the next week. And it turns out that there were some delays on the end of the Office of Economic Development and International Trade that prevented us from getting going as soon as we thought we would be able to. So we just wanted to let you know that we think that is being resolved very quickly. And so we expect this to launch next week, fingers crossed. Again, the early childhood councils have a role to play in this work. We went through that at length in the last presentation. So if you missed July's State TA Day, or if you want to remind yourself about that, please go back and watch that presentation, review the guidance that we sent to all early childhood councils, and please just contact Angela and I if you have any questions about that role. Certainly one piece, without getting into too much detail about everything else, is just promoting the consultation and the training that will be available for free to our licensed providers. And so as soon as we know for sure that this is a go, we will get you the information to share with your provider networks. Please make sure that you've included your contact information in the Google Drive the contact sheet that we referenced in the last presentation. So if you are interested in supporting the small business development centers in this work, we know that you have the capacity to do so, and they know that your contact information is there and available, and that you've indicated your willingness to be a support. We have one thing we would love your quick feedback on, and you can throw this in the chat. The small business development centers, we had originally talked about them doing a home-specific training, at least one home-specific training. Instead, what they have proposed is possibly doing joint training with different breakouts. These are all going to be virtual, so a breakout for homes, a breakout for centers throughout the training, so that they can work on different topics within sort of their own cohort as they move through what would be a training for both audiences. And we would love to hear your feedback on whether you think it would be best to have one home-specific training or just have the home-based breakout and a more generalized training. And so if you would just throw your thoughts on that into the chat box, we'll monitor that. And with that, I want to be respectful of time. And so again, any questions, please reach out to Angela and I. Thank you, Monica, for letting us have this one extra moment.
Sure, thank you guys so much. And we went into this meeting probably knowing we'd go a little bit over, but since this is kind of our chance to touch base with the councils and CCRNRs once a month, we hope you can stay on for probably an extra 5 minutes. If you can't, just keep in mind that we always record these and send out the follow-up items. But next we have Jennifer O'Brien from the Colorado Department of Education. She'll be presenting on the trainer credential renewal interface. And Jennifer, I do have your slides, but if you have them available and would rather present from your computer, it's up to you.
Sure, Monica, you can just hand over control.
Yep. All right, there you go.
Okay. Now I hope that you
can see your screen.
Okay, can you see a presentation?
No, looking at your email.
Okay. All right.
There we go.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk to you briefly today about some changes to the trainer credential interface. And let's see, let me go to the next slide here. Okay, so we now have the trainer credential renewal interface live in the PDIS. It's been live for about a month now. So now trainers can apply for both the initial trainer credential and a renewal within the PDIS. And on the trainer credential page, we have a trainer credential overview document that details both the initial and renewal requirements for all levels of the trainer credential. And then we also have a step-by-step how-to guide for the renewal process. And, you know, if you have any questions about the information that I presented here or that are on the site pages, you can reach out to the help desk. And our contact information is right here on this slide. So that's all I have. That was my short presentation.
Does anyone have any questions for Jennifer? All right, well, if you guys think of anything, go ahead and you can shoot her an email. Her contact information will be on the follow-up items. Thanks so much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
All right, so moving right along, we will have Karen, and she will be talking about House Bill 1053.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. And I was hoping to have more information today, but I will give you an update on where we are with this process. So hopefully everyone saw the email that we sent out last Friday, giving you your additional funding allocations for the base funds. And what we were hoping to have for you today was the exact breakdown of how to use the GAE funding. However, we're still waiting on a few more details from our accounting team. Basically, what that means is when we started to look at all of our funding streams, we have this new funding allocation going into quality, which we're super excited about. And it has a little less restriction on it. So the fiscal agreement is not needed for that, which we talked about last month. But we do still have some funding that does require having the fiscal. That's our infant toddler quality and availability and our targeted CCAP funding, both state general funds, and they both require the use of require that we're supporting families on CCAP. So what we're trying to figure out at this point is how to separate our GAE funds into those two buckets and what is the percentage. Basically, it's looking right now that it's roughly going to be 55% of our funding will go towards those programs who are serving those families on CCAP, and the other 45% will go to be more open to those programs who are just serving those families that are identified in the definitions in the school readiness rule, which pretty much opens it up to most every other program. But we're having accounting check our numbers and making sure those allocation percentages are right. And then we're also going to need to get that set up appropriately in EC Connect. So we've had an initial meeting with DECC around that need. And of course, we also got to get all of our contract amendments in place. So as of this time, what we're asking you guys to do is update your budgets based on the information that you received in that email. And if for some reason somebody didn't receive that, contact your coordinator. They have all that information. We can resend that out to you. And then we're also, of course, asking for your updated school readiness plans. And if you guys could get all of that stuff to us by September 11th. I know originally we talked October 31st, but August 31st, but we couldn't get you that budget information until last week. So if you could do that, then we'll get right on those amendments. I'm expecting to get information. I was hoping to have it today by end of week or early next week from the accounting team. From that point, then we can finalize the business rules, finalize the MOU, and get the amendments going. So I think it's all good news. It's just a couple of little details we're still trying to hammer out. Any questions on that? I know it was a very quick update.
I did want to add that if you need to amend your systems building budget or make any changes, now's the time to do that. Just include that in your with the email that you send your coordinator. So that's going to be if you need any changes to salary or if you need to make any changes over that allowable 10%. Because keep in mind that a contract amendment sometimes can take up to 3 months.
Yeah, and I've given contracts a heads up on this too, and so they've promised they will process things as quickly as they can once we get the ball rolling with all these other outstanding pieces. So we'll do things as quickly as possible.
Okay, we do have one question regarding virtual ratings. Are they valid for 2 or 3 years?
Yes, so we originally had mentioned to you guys that our proposal was to, do a 2-year just because some of the things have changed. We took that proposal to our leadership team and we collectively agreed we would keep it valid for 3 years in an effort to keep as many things consistent as we can. And so we will be, like for example, if you had a program that was sitting in March, obviously couldn't get rated, and now they're going to get maybe rated in October, November. Their rating will be effective once they accept their rating from that October date for the 3 years then going forward. Hopefully that made sense.
Okay, and Lisa Matter from the EQ team just said that if you need to make changes to your EQ budget, to please include her in that email. That's if you need to make an amendment. And we do have a question. It says, have the updated rules been sent out? Which we which we anticipate may impact how we budget for extra money. The school readiness rules, the Colorado Shine business rules.
Yeah, what
Is
are
that
we?
what you're referring to, Christina? Yes.
Okay, and those are the, Christina, we can't finalize those unfortunately until we have that information from accounting. But for the purposes of planning, basically it's not going to look into too terribly much different, other than the funding will be, a portion of it will be dedicated to serving programs who are serving CCAP families, and the portion of it will be dedicated to serving other programs within your in your catchment areas. And so it's roughly 50-50. It's about a little bit 55-45, something like that. If you have like some specific questions, definitely reach out and we'll try to work through that with you while we're trying to finalize this with our accounting team.
And the award amounts will be the same.
Yes, for now the awards amounts will be the same.
And you can only apply once in this state fiscal year. So if you're a program without a CCAP fiscal and say a level 1 and you receive an award, then you become a level 2 and earn a CCAP fiscal agreement, you cannot apply again this fiscal year.
Right.
So you can't double dip.
Right. And then the other thing just to point out too, and I think we mentioned this last time, but because our improvement grants are tied into the infant toddler quality and availability funding, that's state funding, we will only be able to award those to programs who are level 2 and serving families through CCAP.
And that's those capital improvement grants that are $7,500.
Correct.
So more to come, everyone, hopefully in the next couple
sorry,
days.
we didn't have more today. We were like asking, please get us something by Thursday afternoon, but I guess it's maybe it's more complicated than I was making it out to be, but hopefully very, very soon we'll get, next day or two, we'll get the final answers. Boy, it just takes a whole lot to, having a little extra money to spend.
Okay, we are out of time. So thank you guys very much. And we will see you next month. Take care.